Alright, so I talked about a coffee grinder previously on my YouTube channel. It's effectively a roller style grinder that's small. Uses, technicality wise, three, but it's really four. Two at the top, and then one at the bottom that actually splits into two and will go off to the sides and go a little bit closer up. Uh, Two at the top are to split. As they go down, they go into a reservoir. They then kind of churn. They'll grind at the ones at the top again. But then, if you get it really fine, it'll grind off to the sides. Now, that's fine because that's just gearing and gapping and all the rest of it. So just a little bit of rotation of some of the gear and grind. Their placement, the burr placement, I guess. But I talked about it before. It's already on my YouTube. I stuck a hydrophobic, lipid phobic, and anti-static ceramic coating on it. That's apparently it's food grade safe, but its main use was in maritime boat applications because of the hydroscopic effects. It's light and it's hard, and it would mean particles with the anti-static and hydrophobic, not hydroscopic, hydrophobic would ultimately keep water from sticking to it, and it was really lightweight. So I was like, oh yeah, no, that it's fairly cheap too. So I was like, oh yeah, no, I'll use that. That's easy. I'll just get some steel, you know, drum or cylinders really, and then if I make a exoskeleton that holds that, but it's not really an exoskeleton. It's just a steel frame, right? That I then coat that with the ceramic because there's a whole process apparently with how it dries and then it makes it. Doesn't really matter because it's effectively like made as a liquid that you pour into something and then you let it slowly dry off and then it makes the coating form that type of setup and coating kind of a deal. And it would, if you were to rub it really hard and scratch it, it would reform it because it's based upon the air. So, never really had a problem with that idea. Um, in fact, worked tremendously easily well, and it's always kind of surprising other people didn't do it, especially with how cheap it is. But that's gearing stuff. That's easy, simple stuff. You know, it has a fan on it. It then has a centripetal. Anyways, point is filter at the bottom, like a sieve, but it's not a sieve because sieves will break and create more fines, which I don't want. So, the basic grinder part has a initial break. As it goes through, it does the whole churn, all that. Then it's like, well, that's filter for like, you know, a little closer, or it'll just run through for your standard style of French press. And then if you get to espresso, it'll go off to the sides. It'll get much closer, and it'll push it off through the sides. There's a little plunger at the top that'll take the amount of beans that you want, and it'll slowly push it down through the roller bearings, which are not roller bearings, but I guess they're kind of like that. Anyways, they're not roller bearings though. It's just they're a drum, a hardened steel drum that's coated with this ceramic coating. Same thing with you know how you can stamp out hard steel. You know what I mean, like steel sheet. Right. I was like, well, you can do the same thing, but if you coat it with this ceramic, because it's very hard, and then you make the grinder burrs, the roller burrs, out of really strong, stiff material that's connected, it can't open itself up It can't move itself because its tensile strength wise is quite high. It's a structural part. Same thing for any of the twisting motion. And it's like, well, yeah, sure, you're a lighter roast bean or whatever, but you're not as strong as this. So it's like alignment was easy. Same thing with gearing. Gearing is pretty simple, just make it out of harder material. It can only ever be aligned, period, because they're tubes that are structural to it to begin with. Let's put it this way. A lot of people spend a lot of money trying to make axles and then something to attach to an axle. Meanwhile, I have 4 axles. Each one of them makes each one of them exactly where they should be. That's not how any of this works, right? Guys, that's not right. Come on, how did you do this? How? Tell me all of the ways of your gearing, and I can't imagine in any way how to put forward any gears at all to separate something slightly, or have anything be slightly closer or further away. By simply twisting a dial or anything at all. Proceeds to look at large amounts of these things that exist already throughout many different markets. No way at all to do this. There's not a single chance. It's not possible. It's totally illegal to even assume that it's a thing that could be done. So clearly it can be done, and clearly all that works. It doesn't even match physics. It's breaking the laws of the physics. Meanwhile, me. And these people have money that you ask for investments, while they try and steal your designs. Come on, my team here. Yeah, no, listen to him. See, just fucking make it yourself with the money that you have, and we will come immediately with it to market before you. Anybody want to talk about time more, or Wednesday Pressa, or fucking goddamn? There's so many in there. It's an awkward conversation, by the way, in the hand grinder world. Going on right now. Because a lot of them effectively stole each other's designs. And they all just were like, yo! Can you also make the same thing there, Chinese supplier that I went to make this? And they're like, no. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. Rollers have been around for a long time. They work consistently. They've been very good all the time. This is a bit of a game changer, I guess. I don't know. I personally don't know if it is myself. To me, it's just a gearing thing, and then like the bottom part was really what made it so that way I liked it. You know, the splitting roller at the bottom. You know, that's technically one, but then it's like, it's gonna split. It'll go up and then it'll split out, right? To be able to allow for that to grind the right way. And it just has to match for each one of the rollers that are there. It's spinning, so like that's all it has to do to be able to like push it the right way. But that's also when it's like got a little area for it to rest on, as a result of it being able to have it go off to either side and have a little bit of reservoir for it to feed in between each one of them. Which is, bog standard, you should have been able to know that yourself, truthfully, without really needing me to tell you. Like if you think of the concept, how would it work? You should have already known how to make that work. It's pretty fucking easy and understandable. It'll go back up to the roller at the top. That's for like filter, but if you want to go off to the side, it'll go really far over. That's going to be espresso. But while it does the churn, it'll create some of these fines. But really, for me, it was about rounding off the breaks. Like it basically rubs it against itself, and it creates smoother, more round particles, which are good, kind of to a point. See, what I made it mostly for was for espresso. It was supposed to come with this espresso uh, coffee maker I had. It was only supposed to be like $50, but it was effectively like really easily printed out and made parts that I just stuck together and could make a bunch of them really quickly, and then do lots and lots of volume for cheap, right? And I'd always be making profit on it, even at a $50 price point. But the main thing was that it was preheated all the way to doesn't really matter. We're talking about coffee grinder stuff, so that goes down into a funnel. It would then centripetally kind of filter it out, depending on where you put the grinder, measurement, the micron amount, right? Grind size. But that's a fan and electric motor. So like the electric motor is fairly powerful, but not like super powerful. It's really just meant to slowly kind of be able to grind everything very accurately. I was preferring accuracy over speed. It still doesn't take a tremendous amount of time, but it takes a little bit. But for me, it meant I could run a fan, and then I could have that spin some air as the grind comes down, and then separates the ultrafines, the Turkish delight stuff, and all that you're not looking for, and then everything else gets put out into your nice little basket, and then you have a little kind of like bottom chute that is your little tray. That's like, these are the ultrafines. That you can use these for anything that you want, but they're very small amounts for what it's worth. There's not as much as you would think, which is good. That's preferable. That's waste, right? So that's what I ended up doing for my grinder. But then I was like, okay, but here's the thing. The reason why we like conical burrs is because they often don't have a lot of waste. That stuff doesn't always stick to it. Or once you've got it kind of seasoned, quotation marks and asterisk there, or it's just really just old coffee is stuck to your burrs there, bruh. Yes, and I don't really want to open it up because it seems annoying to have to do so and clean it all out. Don't look at me like that. Yeah, laughter and all that. But for what it's worth, yeah. But that's when I was thinking about the flat and the conical. Right. I was like, well, conical, it's mostly because they don't have to, use the Phillips, head screw to get them in there, or some hex screw or whatever it is. And so I was going through like a basic design phase of like, well, why don't you just do it from the rear? There's nothing stating you can't have it go through the rear. Why do you have to torque it down from the front? It makes like no sense. So you have to make it slightly thicker. Why don't you just put a bolt through the rear? You know what I mean? Like, that's all you have to do. Like, you bolt it through the rear, you make it like a little bit of a star pattern on that inside where you're bolting it, so that way if it wants to turn or walk itself out, it has to move that bolt and the bearer over in order to do it, which it doesn't want to do it as easily or as much, right? So like that's what I ended up just sort of using as any modification in any of my designs for any given like flat burr set, because it was like, well, that's a really easy way to get around these issues. I mean, that immediately just increases the surface area that you have, right? Just was really super simple to get around a large amount of the issues that those present. And then coffee can get stuck in that, and I don't like that. So it's like no more coffee stuck there except for like whatever's left over on that. But you know, that's what that was. I just never really saw why they do it that way. There's got to be a reason. If there isn't one, because it's like we have the technology to send someone to space. We can't like make a bolt work in the rear somehow. We can't do that. I don't get it. I'm not seeing it. You know, I feel like we could do it. You know, that's where I'm at on that one. So, um, my ideas on that one. Conicals were another version of something similar, where it's like, wait a second, wait a second. You conicals are just like slightly egg-shaped cylinders, right? You know, like a triangle, pyramid, egg shape each cylinder, right? Yeah. But why the fuck don't we do that? We can have two burrs, one at the top, one at the bottom. You just slide the bottom burr and the top burr in between the conical of a slightly more rounder conical. You don't have to have the break or be the way it is. Why don't you just do that? And it's like, yeah, right. I never thought about it, but yeah. And it's like, yeah. What's the problem? I don't get it. It falls a little bit more cleanly through because it has to get passed from the grind at the top, and then it has to curve inward just ever so slightly. And in order to do that, that creates its own rounding effect, churn effect from the sides that'll go and grind it to the size and particle we're looking for. It also gives it more surface area, contact time, which is good, but sometimes not always. You see, the faster you spin that, the more lipids you lose, right? Because it gets hot. You don't want that. This is the price to performance of a hand grinder. See, people don't understand that a hand grinder goes slower, and that can actually get you a better grind, even though they're more fine or more consistent at a faster grind, because they get heated up during that grind. They'll also lose some of their structural interior, and some of the lipids will come out, the fats, right? And it can oxidize a little bit more quickly, which is why if you grind it quickly, you want it immediately right after, more often than not, unless you're hand grinding, in which case it's usually, in my experience, just fine to leave them overnight or for a few hours or something like that. Right? Now, your results may vary and everybody's different on that one, but you're always at a race against time. The moment you grind something, the more off-gassing occurs because more surface area has been exposed. And heat has been introduced, and stirring has been introduced to start the chemical process. That kind of thing. So, it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't, and it really depends on your flavor profile that you want. But, end of the coffee grinder tech thing here is just, or grinders are good right now. My little roller thing is just a little tiny, small, compact little bastard. That's only going to be like $50 that I was going to sell it for, because it's some stamped steel and it's some coated steel, and it's like a 3D printed and then finished into a mold kind of like, part that this sticks into as a little bit of a measurement, because we can get these little, 500 grams, I think it was, scales, and you can put that with a little funnel at the top, right? And it's like, all right, so I want this amount, and so that would be your measurement, and the expected loss is, learned by you over time, for your fines in the tray below, which is fine, okay? And then that's pretty simple, especially when it's a little tower, and they already have these ginormous ones anyways, so it's like, there's nothing stating I can't make small cylinders that are like that. There's nothing at all saying that I can't do that. Yeah. Especially when they were like, no, you need 3 of these things to make that work. I was like, well, I'm going to use 3. Well, technicality it's 4, but like, I'm going to use 3. Watch how you don't use your space as best as you could, really. And it's like, falls in, and it breaks it up at the top again, and it breaks it off down the sides. Simple stuff. I don't get it. The way they do it, it just seems improperly done, and it happens to just use so much more space than I feel is necessary, and the amount of power that they require to move that, because it's so heavy. When, like, steel, structurally, material design wise, is very strong with only a little bit of thickness. And all you have to do is add a little bit of that ceramic. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Why do you have these ginormous rollers? What is this? Like, it's just gearing at that point. Like, you don't need what you say you need. Like, they need this kilowatt, big boy motor, and I'm like, no, I can get away with like a freaking basic, and I mean basic, like stronger though, kind of box fan, electric motor. Now, granted, that's bigger in terms of a motor, so I'm not really gonna do that, because like that seems ridiculous after a while to like ship like a box fan motor and all that, right? But like, that's the torque value roughly that you're gonna need. That's like kilowatt, watt, joule, that kind of thing, like the way they measure things, right? So it's like, for me, it's like I only need about this amount of newton meters, and so newton meters for this would turn into about around the 227 to 250, 85, depending on what we're talking about. So a solid 400 easily takes care of everything, because you have to also have the fan, right? So once you add in that, and then you use a proper gearing ratio, which changes. All right, I use CVT gears pretty much consistently. I use a ring and ball and cones. So it's like they have a ring, 2 rings and a ball, and then I have another ball with 2 cones, and that allows for the fan and the gears for the rollers to run just fine at the proper torque value to maintain the RPM I'm looking for the given Newton meter torque value, RPM value of the electric motor I have. It just makes it far more efficient. Way, way simpler. Yeah. It's like, you must cool them, right? With something. Probably some air. The oil that's I mean, I freaking... What? No, I... What? Are you stupid? Like, actually. This guy's been like, no, you must do this. I don't understand. This, blah, 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 blah. Like, in my head. And I'm like, you are stupid, actually, aren't you? Like, you're one of those people that would go into, like, a college engineering, mechanical engineering course. That's like, that they're in their PhD, ready kind of side. And, like, you'd go in there and be like, explain to me how all this works. You must impress me. And the professor goes, like, you're not in any way a student I have. I've seen a lot of, you're not one, aren't you? Get out of this class. The fuck out of this class. Did you pay for this class? It's not funny. Like, that kind of fucking stupid, just stupid, and I mean stupid levels of like, comment. Yeah. Watch out for people like that in your life. Just letting you know. People like that don't know jack shit, and they usually end up, unfortunately, having money if they're entitled and psychopathic enough to fucking show up at somewhere and have a bunch of people that they'll try and con into believing that they need to be the ones impressed. So that way, you're believed. I don't have to fucking get you to believe me, bitch. I don't have to do nothing. What are you doing? Get out of here. You're literally an idiot. Anyways. No, I was just thinking about coffee grinder stuff because Lance Hedrick put out a recent video about coffee grinders. I just bought one, brand new one. It's the X Pro S by Z Espresso. Or 1Z Espresso. Which is, or Easy Espresso, right? Yeah. Which is nice, truthfully. It says it can do the espresso, the pour over, and the French fries, which is great. So that'll be good. I mean, birthday present, Christmas stuff from the old folks there. Uh, Consolation prize because they promised to allow for me to get a motorcycle so I can finally actually go meet people and maybe talk to others and stuff like that. And they decided to completely scrap the whole idea after they promised me they would. So that was nice. Could have updated that. That isn't just on my Twitter. I'm sorry, X now. Alright. So here, I'm trying to figure out like what the other one was that I had for a coffee grinder. Because there isn't really a lot of ways to put together coffee grinders easily. Like the conical style burr that's really just a bunch of roller burrs is like the only other real way you could do it, which is effectively like a bunch of triangle burrs and then some ring and a ball burr. So it's like, think like I was talking about with the CVT transmission, it's like a conical. Alright, but it's like, it's really they're rollers, they're flat and smooth, and then they get close and then you just move them outwards, and then a ring that sits underneath that you would then have a ball that would have that gap, and then that would be what is your real kind of like actual burr, but you have a ring at the top and a ring at the bottom, so that way it can go through the conical, that's your breaker, and then it goes down into the ring. The ring is static, and then the ball would move. The ball just needs to be able to grab it and be able to rotate to be able to grind, right? But it's like you can rotate the rings, but you wouldn't really need to rotate the rings. You know what I mean? Like, you could keep them static, but I suppose it wouldn't be that impossible to basically get them to all roll off of something. In fact, I'd probably just put like little bearings there that would situate themselves. Like they'd have to be a part of the same thing. No. No, that's definitely not the case. It'd be more like flatter-ish gears. Like gears, right? But see, I don't like that. See, the reason why I wanted that gap was because it's just fine the way it is if they all rotate, but you only really need the ball to rotate. Like, seriously, you only ever need the ball to rotate, and you can always stick that from, or get that ball to rotate from, like, the conical burr set axle. That would be the one rotating along the side of the length of the hand grinder here. Alright, so like you'd be able to rotate it, vertically versus horizontally. And that would be fine because that would then just stick to the ball around the side. The side would then be able to be the thing that kind of grabs it and then forces it down, or ultimately is, somewhere attached to at the bottom, which is fine. Right. But I don't know. Like, for me, it's not that big of a deal. Mostly because the more you grind, the more fines you get, because of the fact that the vast majority of breaks create further deeper in, like, cracks in glass breaks. Like, you can grind glass a little bit, and you can ultimately have it shatter in a particular way that gets you, your type of grind size, right? But the more you grind it, the more often it propagates deeper in, and these micro cracks like to further increase, which means you'll get finer and finer cracks, finer and finer particles, until you get to a Turkish delight. So there's always a give and take with how many times you can grind something. What I tell you is the basic kind of idea of having any one of those things. Like, sure, it's super compact and it would be nice. It's like there's a reason why I'd rather have the rings be static versus like the ball. The ball moving is a lot easier to move, because you have to feed in the reservoir the um, grinded beans, the broke beans, into the ball and the ring area, right? And so it's like that's where you would attach it and have it feed into, like, a pump into the ball, which now the ball spins based upon the thing at the top, and since it will have to be squeezed back inwards towards the bottom of the ball, that means it now has a stabilizer area at the bottom, so that way it always stays aligned to the tube that it's on. That way it also pump it slowly out and, remove any of it that happens to stick to the bottom of the ring, which is fine. It means you can also change its gapping clearance at the bottom and at the top, depending on how you want to do that, which is why that would be like a twisty kind of like opening aperture. And since they have cameras that happen to work just fine with apertures, I'm pretty sure you could do it for this too. So you can adjust your pre-break size, and you can adjust your pump size and your aperture size, which would also change your placement of how close those rings are to the ball. Everything stays aligned and it's all one piece, roughly what it would feel like, because of course it would balance off the tube and the conical burrs, so all of it would be structural. So, yes, no, I know that, like, that's a really long distance of time to go through in terms of, space and time listening for about 30 minutes here to get to the point where you have new grinder tech that's a hand grinder. That would be innovative and cool and all the cool stuff, and yeah. But it would beat most people's. I know, here's a way to upgrade your burr that you currently use, because that's probably something you want to do or whatever. You know what I mean? But, for what it's worth, I'm sick and tired of people taking my stuff. So don't take this. This is just me recording this, and then I'm going to put it on YouTube. If you want to work with me to make them, that'd be great. Just an idea I had. Otherwise, go fuck yourself. If that ever comes out, that's mine. And I know it is. Because I came up with it back in 2015. I just never talked about it out loud. Or, well, also, not just out loud, but also recorded it. This time I finally recorded it. 2016, something like that. Whatever it is. Back when I lived in Chandler with my parents. But you'd be surprised how many different designs have come out that are literally exactingly my designs. So there's that.